A land divided, the seeds of conflict. The vast plains of South Africa witnessed a clash of empires, a struggle for land, gold and freedom. This was not just a battle over territory, but a fight for the soul of a nation. The Boer War, fought between the British Empire and the two Boer republics, the South African Republic and the Orange Free State, from 1899 to 1902, was a pivotal moment in African history. It was a brutal conflict that reshaped the region and left scars that would last for generations. It left a legacy of bitterness and division that still resonates today. The war's aftermath saw the rise of new political movements and a deepening of racial and cultural divides. The Boers, descendants of Dutch settlers who arrived in the 17th century, were skilled pioneers and fiercely independent. They had carved out a life in a harsh and unforgiving land, developing a unique culture and identity. They lived on farms scattered across the veldt, their lives intertwined with the land. Their connection to the land was not just economic, but deeply spiritual, forming the core of their identity. But their world was about to be turned upside down by the arrival of a new force, the British Empire. The British brought with them not only military might, but also a different way of life and governance. Britain, hungry for resources and driven by a desire to control the sea route to India, had already established a strong presence in southern Africa. Their ambitions were not just limited to trade, but extended to political and cultural dominance. The discovery of diamonds in 1867 and gold in 1886 in Boer territories further fueled British ambitions, setting the stage for a showdown with the Boers. These precious resources were seen as keys to wealth and power. The conflict was about more than just gold and diamonds. It was about control, power, and the future direction of a nation. It was a clash of cultures, a struggle between two peoples with very different visions of the future of South Africa. The Boers and the British each had their own dreams and aspirations for the land. The Boers, deeply religious and conservative, were determined to preserve their independence and way of life. Their faith and traditions were central to their identity and resistance. The British, driven by imperial ambition and a belief in their own superiority, were equally determined to assert their dominance. They saw themselves as bringers of civilization and progress, often dismissing the Boers' way of life as backward. Gold rush and grievances, tensions boil over. The discovery of gold in the Witwatersrand, near present-day Johannesburg, was a monumental turning point in South African history. The influx of British miners and prospectors, known as Uitlanders, transformed the region dramatically, creating a booming economy that soon dwarfed the Boer republics. The Boers, wary and suspicious of the growing British presence, imposed strict restrictions on the Uitlanders, including denying them voting rights and levying heavy taxes. This fueled deep resentment among the Uitlanders, who increasingly looked to Britain for support and intervention. Adding fuel to the fire was the infamous Jameson Raid of 1895, a botched attempt by British colonial administrator Cecil Rhodes to overthrow the Boer government in Johannesburg. Though a failure, the raid significantly heightened tensions and deepened Boer distrust of British intentions and motives. Negotiations between the Boer republics and the British government eventually broke down, with neither side willing to compromise or find common ground. The Boers, fully aware of their military disadvantage, began preparing for war, stockpiling weapons and forming strategic alliances. They knew they were facing a formidable foe in the British, but they were determined to defend their land, their way of life, and their hard-won freedom. Early Boer victories, a stinging blow to the empire, shaking its very foundations. In October 1899, the Boers, under the leadership of Paul Kruger, President of the South African Republic, launched a preemptive strike against British outposts, catching them by surprise. Their commando system, based on highly mobile units of mounted riflemen, proved devastatingly effective in the early stages of the war, allowing them to outmaneuver the British forces. The Boers, expert marksmen and tacticians, inflicted a series of humiliating defeats on the British Army, showcasing their superior strategy and skill. Besieging key towns like Ladysmith, Mafeking and Kimberley, cutting off vital supply lines and communication. The British, accustomed to fighting conventional battles against poorly equipped opponents, were caught off guard by the Boers' mobility and marksmanship, struggling to adapt to this new form of warfare. News of the Boer victories sent shockwaves through the British Empire, causing widespread concern and disbelief. The image of the invincible British army being humbled by Boer farmers resonated across the globe, challenging the perception of British dominance, undermining British prestige and emboldening resistance movements in other parts of the empire, inspiring a wave of anti-colonial sentiment. Kitchener's counter-offensive, turning the tide. The British, stung by these early setbacks, poured reinforcements into South Africa, placing Lord Horatio Kitchener in overall command. Kitchener, a ruthless and efficient military strategist, implemented a new strategy aimed at crushing Boer resistance. British forces, now vastly superior in numbers and firepower, began to push back the Boers. Key battles such as the Battle of Paardeberg and the Battle of Diamond Hill saw the British gain the upper hand, eventually capturing the Boer capitals of Bloemfontein and Pretoria. But the Boers, though facing overwhelming odds, refused to surrender. They abandoned conventional warfare and resorted to guerrilla tactics, melting away into the vastness of the veldt, where they would wage a bitter and protracted struggle against the British. A bitter guerrilla war scorched earth and concentration camps. The war entered a new and brutal phase as the Boers, led by resourceful commanders like Christian de Wet and Jan Smuts, waged a relentless guerrilla campaign against British supply lines and outposts. The British, frustrated by their elusive enemy, responded with increasingly harsh measures. Kitchener implemented a scorched earth policy, destroying Boer farms and crops in an attempt to deny the guerrillas food and shelter. To further cripple Boer resistance, the British established concentration camps where Boer women, children and elderly were interned. Conditions in the camps were horrific. Overcrowding, disease and malnutrition were rampant, leading to the deaths of thousands of Boer civilians, particularly children. The use of concentration camps remains a deeply controversial aspect of the war, a stain on the British Empire's record. The price of peace, the Treaty of Vereeniging. By 1902, the Boers, exhausted and facing starvation, were forced to negotiate. The Treaty of Vereeniging, signed in May of that year, officially ended the war. The Boer republics were annexed by the British, but the Boers were promised self-government in the future. The war came at a heavy price for both sides. Thousands of soldiers and civilians perished, leaving deep scars on the land and its people. The British Empire, though victorious, emerged from the conflict bruised and its reputation tarnished. The Boer War marked the beginning of the end of British imperial dominance in South Africa. It sowed the seeds for the rise of Afrikaner nationalism, which would ultimately lead to the establishment of apartheid in 1948. Scars on the veldt, the war's enduring legacy. The Boer War left an indelible mark on South Africa. It shaped the country's political landscape, fueled racial tensions, and laid the groundwork for the apartheid regime that would grip the nation for decades. The war also had a profound impact on British military thinking. The Boers' guerrilla tactics exposed weaknesses in British training and doctrine, leading to reforms that would shape the British Army's approach to future conflicts. The memory of the war, particularly the hardships endured in the concentration camps, continues to resonate in South Africa today. It serves as a reminder of the human cost of conflict and the dangers of imperialism. Echoes of Empire lessons from the South African War. The Boer War holds important lessons for us today. It reminds us of the dangers of nationalism, the seductive allure of empire, and the enduring legacy of colonialism. It also highlights the importance of understanding different perspectives and the need for dialogue and reconciliation in the aftermath of conflict. The wounds of the past, though they may never fully heal, can serve as a reminder of the importance of building a more just and equitable future. Remembering the Fallen Memorials and Reflections. Across South Africa and the United Kingdom, memorials and cemeteries stand as solemn reminders of the Boer War. These sites offer a space for reflection, remembrance and reconciliation. They also serve as important educational resources, helping us to understand the complexities of the past and to learn from the mistakes of previous generations. By remembering the fallen, we honor their sacrifice and strive to build a more peaceful future. The Boer War in popular culture, literature, film and beyond. The Boer War has been a subject of fascination for historians, writers and filmmakers for over a century. From Rudyard Kipling's poems to modern-day films, the conflict continues to capture the imagination and spark debate. These works of art and literature offer different perspectives on the war, exploring themes of courage, sacrifice, brutality, and the human cost of conflict. They serve as a reminder of the importance of preserving the memory of the past and of engaging with history in a meaningful way.